Day 1 in Minnesota started off pretty decent for me. I felt like I was riding pretty well, but I did make a mistake on section 4. Just didn't quite have my line figured out and didn't hit where I thought I was, and ended up falling into a hole and taking a 1. Then other than that, in the morning sections, I had a 1 on number 8. Got a little off balance, kicked sideways, took a dab. But other than that, I stayed clean for the morning, and going into the shootout, had a decent points lead. I knew I had some cushion, but I didn't want to slack off in the shootout either. The sections were tough and actually a little bit scary. Section 1, I didn't really like the big wall we had to hit, but it rode much easier than it looked for me anyway. And I was able to stay clean throughout each shootout section, and the guys had some great rides, so they put a lot of pressure on me to do the same, and definitely happy with the riding overall on Saturday.
Saturday started off a little rough as usual. My first laps aren't the greatest, but I ended up pulling in a pretty good second lap. So I was actually in second behind Pat, and right behind me was David and Daniel. They were a point behind me going into the shootout. And then in the shootout, you know, I was kind of intimidated by the first wall, and took 2 5s there, so I really had a lot of ground to make up, because I know Daniel made it through once and David made it through both times. And I ended up, I think I cleaned everything except for I took a 1 in the rest of the shootout, and that was enough to put me in second place. So you know, Saturday went really well compared to last weekend, so I'm really happy that everything went smoothly.
Yeah, Saturday started off pretty good. After the first loop, I was sitting in second place, so I was pretty happy about that. But going into the second loop, I unfortunately took a 5, and that kind of set me back a couple of places. But going in the shootout, I was about mid-pack, and I thought the shootout sections were a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed them. They were right up my alley. Unfortunately, I didn't make them up some of the sections, but that's okay. So we continue to push harder for Sunday.
Saturday was a solid ride for me. I feel the first 2 loops I put in some solid rides, but some of my rides got covered up by some silly mistakes I made in other spots. Overall, it went pretty well going into the shootout, and then for the shootout, I just tried to give it all I had, and you know, some mistakes were made, but also I had some really spectacular rides. You know, can't thank the team enough, especially my minder, Louis Balapew, for all the help. The Scorpa 300's working great, but yeah, I actually ended up bending a bar, and they actually got it switched out in no time, so I'm super grateful to them for helping me finish.
I had a lot of fun Saturday. I wish I could have ridden better. It ended up being a pretty bad day for me, you know, started out in the morning. Just felt like I was just taking a whole bunch of dabs. I probably must have had, you know, 12 ones, which is really rough, you know, when there's only 2 loops. And then we go into shootout, and I was in 8th position, and was able to maintain that. The sections were pretty difficult in the shootout, but they were a lot of fun. It was fun to get out there and, you know, pull off some big splatters and things like that, and have the crowd around, and that was a lot of fun. And I was able to hold Andy off for the shootout, and wasn't able to improve my position, but you know, have some good rides and put on a good show for the crowd, and it was a lot of fun up here in Minnesota.
Saturday was probably my best day so far of the 2 rounds. I cleaned up my loops a lot. The first loop was a little shaky, but I rode a lot better than I have and stayed a lot more consistent. Had less 5s and silly mistakes, so I finished the best so far. I was pretty happy with it.
Saturday started off really rough for me. After the first 3 sections, I had 10 points and 5 in section 2 and 3. So I was really disappointed with my first lap score of 16 points. And coming into the second lap, I knew that I had to make up some ground because I was going to leave the door open for the other riders. So I ended up with a 4-point lap and then a 3-point lap to end off the day. So overall, I'm pretty happy with how I rode, but I know what I need to do coming into Sunday, and that is to clean up the first loop score.
Saturday was really good for me. Coming into the weekend, I had my goals set high. I wanted to be on the podium where I should be, and it was kind of a dream day for me. First loop started pretty good. I think I had 15 points, and I thought that was a bad loop, but coming in, I saw the points. That put me in first best loop, and second loop ended up really good, 5-point loop. Then I came in with a 10-point loop for my third loop, which totaled up pretty good, and put me in third, and I'm really happy that was my first expert podium, so kind of a dream come true.
The sections on Sunday were quite a bit like the morning sections on Saturday, about the same difficulty, besides a couple that were probably a little bit tougher. Section 10 was the hardest for me anyway. The first lap, I sat in between the rocks and did a splatter out of the hole, but then that rock blew out for the next laps, and I had to jump the gap on the second lap and ended up looping out on top and having definitely the save of the day for me. Landed way too far inverted on the rear tire, got the rear brake, but as the front end was coming down, I was headed out of the ribbon, and somehow I pulled it to the right and saved that one. That was definitely a close call. Almost had a 5 there in multiple ways, so happy to hold together for that one and held on to a clean day. So yeah, just really happy with the bike and Ryan's help. Everything is working well this year and hoping to keep the momentum going.
Today, you know, as usual, started off a little rough. First lap, I was just taking all sorts of stupid dabs. And even in my second lap, I think I was taking dumb dabs, but I minimized my score a little bit. And then going into my last lap, I got rid of a lot of stupid mistakes, but still had a couple. I ended up with a 7-point last loop. But, you know, I thought that may be good enough for second, but Daniel sneaked in with a 4-point last loop to get me. So, you know, I'm not too upset with third, but I would have rather, you know, been in second, obviously, but there's always next weekend to improve. So all in all, it was an awesome weekend for me.
Sunday was an okay day for me. It wasn't my best day, but I'm pretty happy with my results. I'm pretty happy with my riding. I felt solid. Just first loop, I had a couple mistakes. I had 2 5s, and then overlaunched my bike in one of the sections, and that kind of crashed pretty hard, and I kind of hurt my knee that loop, but I was able to come back strong my second and third loop and put in some solid loops. I was still dabbing here and there, but it was enough to finish 5th place, and so we'll look forward to Colorado.
I had some solid rides on Sunday, but you know, throughout the day I made some really silly mistakes that shouldn't have been made, and overall I was rather disappointed with my ride. I know it's just my first year in the class, but overall I feel like after Nebraska my results should have been a little bit better. But you know, take this all into consideration, learn from it, and move on to Colorado and give it all I got there.
I didn't think things could get much worse than Saturday, but little did I know it went from bad to worse. My first loop was really rough. I had 30 points, and that put me in last by 8 points. And I just had a whole bunch of 3s, and didn't have any 5s, so that was good, but I was just taking dabs all over the place, and it was really frustrating. And then I turned around a little bit more for my second loop, came with 14. Still had a lot of dabs, but you know, I had 5 1s and then 3 3s. I was looking on to improve on that momentum in my third loop, but then I just had a lot of weird things go on, and had 5, a stall, and a couple other 3s that I clicked into neutral and didn't get up a log, and so it was really tough. But you know, I had a lot of fun up here, and it was a good event here in Minnesota, and hopefully to fix a few things in Colorado and get some better results.
Sunday was probably the worst day I've had so far. I just was not ready for these sections. It was definitely quite a harder, but just honestly there were just some bigger rocks that I was not ready for, and just had way too many 5s, and I had some good rides in there, but I just wasn't able to be consistent at all, and definitely a little bit tired, especially towards the end of the day. But you know what, still learned and at least improved the loop scores, so there's at least some things that I can take away from today.
Sunday was probably one of the best days I felt on the bike. I was having a lot of fun with a 4-point first lap, so I wasn't making very major mistakes, and I was really happy with how I was riding. And then I tried to minimize my mistakes for the second and third loop, and a 3-point second loop, and actually I managed to pull out a clean last loop. So I'm really happy with how I rode and how my bike was working. And big shout out to the team and Adam Blumhorst for keeping me in line this weekend, and I know what I need to work on for Colorado.
Sunday was really good. I started off real good pace. I think I had like 12 points on my first loop, then I came in with another 12, and ended with a 9-point loop on my third loop, which was really good. I wasn't sure how I was riding compared to the others. I never really got to see any other expert riders ride, but had a couple crashes and couple dumb points, but at the end of the day, I finished up second, one place better than yesterday, so kind of a dream weekend for me in Minnesota.
And our winner today is Will Myers. For the women's pro class, in second place, Kylie Sweden. And in first place, Pat Smaji.
Smile!